First Contact's Price. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the ESS Harbinger, watching the massive Nexar diplomatic vessel approach. Its crystalline structure caught the light of Alpha Centauri, creating rainbow refractions that danced across the bridge. Beautiful, she thought, but something about its perfect symmetry made her uneasy. "They're hailing us again, Captain," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from his communications station. "The Nexar ambassador insists on discussing our shield technology before proceeding with any other diplomatic matters." Chen's jaw tightened. Earth's recent development of quantum phase shielding had caught the attention of every spacefaring race in the sector. The ability to deflect energy weapons with minimal power consumption had revolutionized defensive capabilities. But the Nexar's intense interest felt wrong. "Inform the ambassador that shield specifications are not up for discussion until after we establish basic diplomatic protocols," Chen replied, maintaining the position Earth Command had established. She turned to her science officer. "Dr. Kumar, what's your analysis of their ship?" Kumar's dark eyes narrowed as he studied his readings. "Their weapon systems are powered down." But he paused, frowning. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures in their cargo holds. The pattern matches theoretical models for quantum tunneling devices." Chen felt her skin prickle. Quantum tunneling technology could bypass conventional shields, including the very ones the Nexar were so interested in discussing. Why would a diplomatic vessel need such weapons? "All stations, yellow alert," she ordered quietly, "and get me a secure channel to Earth Command. I don't think this is a simple diplomatic mission anymore." The next 12 hours proved her right. The Nexar vessel launched a surprise attack, attempting to disable the Harbinger's shields and board her. But humanity had learned caution the hard way, and Chen's ship was ready. The battle was brief but decisive, ending with the Nexar vessel retreating with significant damage. But it wasn't a victory. It was just the beginning. Back on Earth, the United Earth Defense Council convened an emergency session. Admiral Zhang's hologram dominated the center of the chamber as he delivered the devastating news. "The Nexar attack on the Harbinger wasn't isolated," he reported grimly. "We've confirmed simultaneous attempts to infiltrate our shield research facilities on Mars and Europa. They were after our shield technology. And something else." "What else could they want?" Counselor Patel demanded. "Us." Dr. Elena Rossi, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stepped forward. "Or more specifically, our genetic material. The Nexar are a collective of engineered species. They believe in forced evolution through genetic manipulation. Based on the data Captain Chen recovered, they see humanity as raw material." The chamber erupted in angry murmurs. Humanity had spent centuries clawing its way to the stars, overcoming countless obstacles and disasters. They had developed their technology through determination and sacrifice. The idea that another species would try to simply steal what they had built, and their very genetic essence, was infuriating. "Then they're about to learn a harsh lesson," Admiral Zhang declared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Humanity didn't survive ice ages, plagues, and our own worst tendencies by being easy prey. If the Nexar want to see what humans are really capable of, we'll be happy to demonstrate." The Council voted unanimously to shift Earth's industries to a war footing. But even as they prepared for conflict, they had no idea just how much the galaxy's understanding of humanity was about to change. In her quarters aboard the Harbinger, Captain Chen reviewed the sensor logs from the battle one more time. The Nexar's tactics had been perfect, precise, and utterly predictable, like a machine following a program. She smiled grimly as she drafted her combat analysis. The Nexar thought they were superior because they had engineered themselves to perfection. But they were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't perfection. It was our ability to adapt, to think creatively, and to survive against impossible odds. The price of peace would be high, but humanity was ready to pay it. And to ensure the Nexar paid their share, the silent strike. The Nexar expected humanity to respond with brute force. Their tactical simulations predicted massive fleet movements, desperate attempts to fortify colonies, and predictable defensive patterns. They were prepared for everything except what actually happened. Silence. For 3 weeks after the failed attack on the Harbinger, human space went quiet. Commercial shipping stopped. Military vessels disappeared. Colonies went dark. The Nexar observers watched with growing unease as humanity seemed to simply vanish. In the command center of the Nexar warship Eternal Symmetry, First Observer Kextal reviewed the sensor data for the 1000th time. "Impossible," he muttered, his crystalline appendages clicking in agitation. "An entire species cannot simply disappear." "Perhaps they have fled deeper into their territory," his second suggested. "The humans must realize they cannot stand against our superior." The ship's emergency alerts screamed to life, not from external attack, but from internal systems failure. Life support, artificial gravity, weapon systems, everything was shutting down simultaneously. "Report," Kextal demanded, but his crew was just as confused. Then the ship's communication system activated on its own, and a human voice filled every chamber. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth Force." The voice was calm, almost conversational. "You're probably wondering how we disabled your ship. The answer is simple. We've been studying you while you studied us. The difference is, we learned something useful." On the bridge of the Harbinger, now cloaked and sitting less than a kilometer from the Eternal Symmetry, Chen watched as her plan unfolded. The 3 weeks of silence hadn't been retreat. It had been preparation. "Your cybersecurity is impressive by most standards," she continued. "But you made it perfect and therefore predictable. My engineers found the pattern in your quantum encryption and turned it against you. Right now, similar attacks are being launched against every Nexar vessel in human space." She paused, letting that sink in. "But don't worry. We're not going to destroy your ships or kill your crews. Instead, we're going to show you exactly why trying to harvest humanity was your worst mistake." Across Nexar space, their perfectly coordinated fleet fell into chaos. Ships lost power, communications failed, and carefully laid plans crumbled. But true to Chen's word, no vessels were destroyed. Instead, each disabled ship received a complete technical analysis of how their systems had been compromised, along with a single message: "This is only the beginning." In the Nexar High Command, the Directive Council faced an unprecedented crisis. Their entire military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and perfect coordination, but the humans had turned that perfection into a vulnerability. "How?" Supreme Director Vexmore demanded. "How did they develop a counter to our system so quickly?" Dr. Elena Rossi could have told them. She was presenting her findings to the Earth Defense Council at that very moment. "The Nexar's mistake was fundamental," she explained. "They engineered themselves for perfection in specific areas. But in doing so, they lost something crucial: adaptability. They can't improvise, can't think laterally. Every solution must come from their existing framework." "And humans?" Counselor Patel asked. "We're messy," Rossi smiled. "We try things that shouldn't work. We make intuitive leaps. We break problems down and build solutions up from scratch." The Nexar wanted our genetics because they sensed this fundamental difference, but they didn't understand it. Admiral Zhang nodded. "And now they're learning the hard way. Our ships are using tactics that change constantly. No two commanders are following the same playbook. We're hitting them with solutions they can't predict because we're making them up as we go." The next phase was already in motion. While the Nexar struggled to adapt their systems against human cyber warfare, Earth's forces were implementing dozens of different strategies simultaneously. Some ships used electromagnetic pulses tuned to the unique frequencies of Nexar technology. Others deployed quantum-entangled viruses that propagated through their networks. Each solution was different, making it impossible to defend against them all. But it wasn't just military technology that gave humanity the edge. Earth's forces demonstrated something the Nexar had engineered out of themselves: initiative. Every commander, Every crew member was encouraged to think creatively, to try new approaches. The Nexer's perfect coordination became their perfect vulnerability. Back on the Harbinger, Captain Chen received reports of Nexer ships retreating across human space, but she felt no triumph. This was just the first lesson. The real war hadn't even begun. They'll adapt, she told her crew. Not quickly and not easily, but they will. And when they do, we'll need to show them something else that makes humans unique, our ability to escalate. Dr. Kumar looked up from his station. You think they'll try something desperate? I know they will, Chen replied. They can't comprehend being outmaneuvered by what they see as an inferior species. Their next move will be to try to prove their superiority, probably with something dramatic and devastating. She turned to face her crew. But that's exactly what we're counting on. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to let your opponent think they're winning, right up until they realize they'd fallen into your trap. As if to prove her words, long-range sensors detected massive power signatures gathering at the edge of Nexer space. They were mobilizing their main battle fleet. The silent strike had worked perfectly. Now it was time for the next phase of humanity's response, and to show the Nexer that they had badly underestimated what humans were capable of when pushed too far. The Hunter's Game. Supreme Director Vex Moore of the Nexer Collective stood before the tactical display, watching as the largest fleet ever assembled in Nexer history moved into position. 10,000 ships, each one a masterpiece of engineering perfection, prepared to launch a devastating attack on human space. The humans believe they have shown us our weaknesses, Vex Moore announced to his command staff. Instead, they have revealed their own. Their chaotic, unpredictable nature makes them vulnerable to overwhelming force. They cannot hope to coordinate a defense against an attack of this magnitude. In that moment of supreme confidence, Vex Moore failed to ask a crucial question. Why had the humans let them assemble such a massive fleet without interference? The answer came 3 days later, as the Nexer Armada entered human space. They expected resistance. They expected desperate battles. What they got instead was a lesson in human psychology. The first sign that something was wrong came when their advanced scouts encountered an unmanned human cargo vessel, drifting seemingly dead in space. Following protocol, they scanned it for threats, found none, and moved to secure it. The moment their boarding parties breached the hull, the ship's quantum computers activated, broadcasting a simple message directly into the Nexer's neural networks. Welcome to the game. Aboard the Harbinger, now serving as the mobile command center for Earth's defense, Captain Chen watched the Nexer fleet's reaction. Status of Operation Nightmare? She asked. Lieutenant Rodriguez grinned. The virus is spreading through their network exactly as planned. Dr. Kumar's psychological profile was perfect. They literally cannot resist trying to decode the message. The virus wasn't designed to damage Nexer systems. Instead, it did something far more insidious. It introduced random errors into their sensory data. Not enough to be immediately noticeable, but enough to make them doubt every reading, every scan, every piece of information they received. The beauty of it, Dr. Kumar explained to the Earth Defense Council via quantum link, is that it plays directly into their psychological weaknesses. The Nexer built their entire society around the pursuit of perfection. The mere possibility that their data might be flawed is more devastating than any weapon we could deploy. The Nexer fleet's perfect formation began to show signs of strain. Ships adjusted positions unnecessarily, responding to phantom sensor readings. Communications became cluttered with requests for verification of basic data. The magnificent coordination that made them so formidable began to fray. But this was just the beginning. Chen had studied Earth's military history extensively, particularly the psychological warfare tactics that had proven effective against technologically superior forces. The Nexer were about to experience them all, adapted for space warfare in ways their ancestors could never have imagined. Phase 2 began with the deployment of quantum ghost projectors. devices that created false sensor readings of human ships appearing and disappearing at random throughout the Nexar fleet. Each ghost ship broadcast fragments of human communications, carefully crafted to seem like leaked tactical data. Some messages suggested the humans had developed weapons that could target specific Nexar genetic sequences. Others hinted at deep infiltration of Nexar command structures. None of these things were true, but proving they were false required resources and attention the Nexar couldn't spare. Humans are fascinating, Dr. Kumar observed, watching the Nexar fleet's increasingly erratic movements. Throughout our history, our greatest victories often came not from superior strength, but from making our enemies defeat themselves. The Nexar's response was predictable. They tried to restore order by implementing even stricter protocols, more rigid formation requirements, and absolute adherence to command hierarchy. In doing so, they made themselves even more vulnerable to human tactics. Earth's actual military forces remained scattered and hidden, launching hit-and-run attacks that seemed random but were carefully calculated to increase the Nexar's paranoia. Each strike targeted a different system in a different way, reinforcing the impression that humans were impossibly unpredictable. "They're starting to break," Rodriguez reported, monitoring the increasingly fragmented Nexar communications. "Their ship captains are requesting permission to act independently to counter our attacks." Chen nodded. "And for the Nexar, that's tantamount to admitting their entire military doctrine is flawed. Their commanders must either deny these requests and watch their fleet become increasingly paralyzed, or grant them and abandon the perfect coordination that is the cornerstone of their strategy." But even as the humans pressed their advantage, Chen felt a growing unease. The Nexar were engineered to be logical, analytical, and above all, adaptable through biological modification. When they finally accepted that their current approach was failing, their response would be extreme. "They're going to try to engineer a solution," she told her officers. "Probably something biological, designed to eliminate our unpredictability at its source. And when they do, we'll be ready," Dr. Kumar finished, "because that's the final trap. They still think this is about biology, about genetics. They haven't realized that humanity's real strength isn't in our DNA. It's in our history, our culture, our learned ability to face the impossible and find a way through." The Nexar fleet continued its advance, but its perfect formation had devolved into a scattered, paranoid mass of ships jumping at shadows. They were still incredibly dangerous. A wounded predator often is, but they were no longer the unstoppable force they had imagined themselves to be. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, humanity's real counterattack was taking shape. The Nexar were about to learn why every species that had ever tried to subjugate humanity had ultimately failed. Desperate measures. The Nexar High Command had never experienced failure on this scale. Their mighty fleet, pride of the collective, had been reduced to a disorganized mass of ships plagued by paranoia and dysfunction. But the Nexar didn't become the dominant force in their region of space by accepting defeat. In a secure facility deep within Nexar space, their top genetic engineers worked frantically to develop what they believed would be the ultimate weapon against humanity. They had collected enough human genetic samples during their initial raids to begin their work, and their bioengineering capabilities were unmatched in known space. "The humans' greatest strength is their unpredictability," Chief Engineer Zexalar explained to the Directive Council. "Their chaotic nature, their ability to act irrationally yet effectively. We can eliminate this through targeted viral reprogramming of their neural pathways." The virus they created was a masterpiece of biological engineering. It was designed to alter human brain chemistry, making humans more logical, more predictable, more like the Nexar themselves. In their arrogance, they saw it as improvement rather than attack. When the first clusters of biological weapons were launched at human colonies, the Nexar expected swift victory. Instead, they received another lesson in why humanity had survived countless extinction-level events on their home world. Dr. Elena Rossi was the first to recognize what was happening. "They fundamentally misunderstand human biology," she explained to the emergency response team. Our immune systems didn't evolve in a laboratory. They evolved on Earth, facing millions of different threats simultaneously. We're not engineered for perfection. We're engineered for survival. The human immune response to the Nexer virus was unlike anything they had anticipated. Instead of succumbing to the carefully engineered changes, human bodies treated the virus like any other invader. Centuries of dealing with rapidly mutating diseases had made human immune systems incredibly adaptable. But it was more than just biology. The moment the first biological attacks were detected, humanity's response demonstrated why they were truly formidable. Deploy the Lazarus Protocol, Admiral Zhang ordered, and across human space, a plan developed long before the Nexer attack sprang into action. Every human colony, every ship, every station had been prepared for biological warfare. Not with a single perfect defense, but with layers of redundant systems, each developed by different teams using different approaches. Some colonies used advanced nanite defenses. Others employed electromagnetic fields that disrupted viral structures. Still others had biological countermeasures bred from Earth's most resilient organisms. Captain Chen watched from the Harbinger as reports came in from across human space. Not a single colony lost, she reported to Earth Command. The Nexer's weapon was perfect, and that was its flaw. Our messy, redundant, overlapping defenses proved stronger than their engineered precision. But humanity's response didn't stop there. Dr. Rossi and her team had already begun analyzing the Nexer virus, and what they found changed the nature of the conflict. Their bioengineering is incredible, she reported, but it's also revealing. The virus carries markers of their own genetic structure, fail-safes to prevent it from affecting Nexer biology. We can use this. In the secure labs of the Harbinger, human scientists began their own work, not to create weapons, but to develop something the Nexer would never expect, a cure for their own genetic stagnation. They engineered themselves for perfection, Dr. Kumar explained, but in doing so, they lost the ability to truly adapt. Each generation is a carefully controlled variation on their template. They don't have our capacity for natural evolution anymore. The implications were staggering. The Nexer's greatest strength, their engineered perfection, was also their greatest weakness. They had sacrificed the chaotic potential of natural evolution for the predictability of designed advancement. As the Nexer fleet regrouped for another attack, humanity prepared its counterstroke, but it wouldn't be another military action or psychological warfare campaign. Instead, they would offer something the Nexer had never considered possible, a way back to true adaptation. Send the message, Chen ordered. The transmission went out across all frequencies, directly to every Nexer ship. Your biological weapon failed. But we've learned something from it, something about you. We offer not surrender, but understanding. You sought to change us. Instead, let us help you change yourselves. In the Nexer High Command, the message caused chaos. The idea that their inferior enemies could offer them biological advancement was impossible to accept. Yet the data accompanying the transmission was undeniable. The humans had found a way to restore the genetic flexibility the Nexer had sacrificed generations ago. The choice the Nexer faced would determine not just the outcome of the war, but the future of their species. And in that moment, humanity demonstrated perhaps its greatest strength. The ability to offer mercy even to those who had shown none. The price of peace. Supreme Director Vex Moore stood before the combined directive council of the Nexer Collective, facing a decision unprecedented in their history. The humans' offer had sent shockwaves through Nexer society. The data was irrefutable. They had indeed found a way to restore the genetic adaptability the Nexer had sacrificed in their pursuit of perfection. This must be another human deception, one council member argued. Another psychological attack meant to destabilize our society. Even if it isn't, another added, accepting help from an inferior species would undermine everything we've built. Our entire civilization is founded on the principle of engineered perfection. But Vexamore had seen something in the human transmissions that haunted him. Not just their technological capabilities or their biological resilience, but something more fundamental: their ability to change, to grow, to become more than they were without losing what made them unique. On the Harbinger, Captain Chen waited. The ship's quantum computers had calculated thousands of possible Nexar responses, but she knew better than to rely solely on predictions. Humans had proven time and again that the most powerful solutions often came from intuition rather than calculation. "They'll accept," Dr. Rossi said confidently. "They have to. We're not just offering them a technical solution. We're offering them a future they thought they'd lost forever." "And if they don't?" Admiral Zhang asked via quantum link. "Then they'll throw everything they have at us," Chen replied. "Because they can't allow the possibility we're right to exist. It would mean their entire civilization is built on a fundamental mistake." The response, when it came, was characteristically Nexar in its precision, but with something new, something almost human in its uncertainty. "We request neutral ground for direct negotiations." The meeting took place on an abandoned space station at the edge of human space. Captain Chen led the human delegation, accompanied by Dr. Rossi and a small team of scientists. The Nexar sent Supreme Director Vexmore himself, along with their leading genetic engineers. "Before we proceed," Vexmore began, his crystalline form catching the light, "explain something to us. Why offer this? After our attacks, our attempt to harvest your genetics, our biological warfare, why help us?" Chen's answer was simple but profound. "Because that's what humans do. We fight when we must, but we also recognize opportunities for growth, not just for ourselves, but for others. Our history is full of former enemies becoming our strongest allies." The negotiations lasted weeks. The Nexar, true to their nature, wanted to understand every detail, every possibility, every potential outcome. The humans, true to theirs, kept finding new ways to explain, new approaches to demonstrate, new possibilities neither side had considered. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. During a break in the formal talks, Dr. Kumar was discussing Earth's history with a junior Nexar scientist. He spoke of how humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times, how they had faced extinction-level events, plagues, wars, and environmental disasters. And yet, he explained, each crisis forced us to adapt,